gonna record this. We're recording this. So if you have to leave early, and for those who can't make it, the recording will be posted in the course under content, Zoom. And okay, good. Get some assistance. And you know what is, I can't remember how to put the there, I can put the captions. Okay, captions, show captions. There you go. All right. So those of you who cannot put the audio on, the captions are at the bottom of your screen. All right. So hi. After all of that, welcome to Medical Terminology Live Chat. All right, we're going to do this every Thursday at 1 o'clock Eastern time, and it'll always be recorded, as I said before, so that if you want to listen again to an explanation, or you can't make it, or you have to leave early, whatever, you still get the pearls of wisdom and the great depths of my knowledge that I am here to share with you. Okay? All right. So let's take a look at last week. Last week, we learned about the basic structure. If you remember, if you haven't, we did not do a live chat. I did a pre-recording because the week didn't start until Wednesday. So that'll just introduce you to all the basic protocols of the course, as well as the construction of medical terminology. Now, the first thing I want you to remember is you are learning a new language. There is nobody that was brought up in a household that I know of where medical terminology was their first language. So, and to complicate things, medical terminology is created from Latin, Greek, as well as French, a little bit of Spanish, a little bit of English. You know, it's a nice mishmash of things. So you may find terms that you are familiar with that have an aligned meaning. And then on the other side, you may find a word that you're familiar with that means something totally different in medical terminology. So rule number one in healthcare, no matter what aspect of healthcare you're going into, rule number one is never, ever, ever assume. If you're pretty sure you know what something means, look it up in the medical dictionary. Last week I talked about that. You should absolutely get a paper medical dictionary. You can buy one on Amazon for less than $10. And that is a resource I want. And the reason yes, it's available online for free, but I want you to have immediate access to this resource. So the minute you come across a word and you're not sure you know what it means, I want you to look it up, because that's really how you're going to learn this language. This is not you cannot just sit down and memorize everything. It's too much. So the way you're going to get your brain to acclimate to this language is repetition, repetition, repetition. So you don't know what a word means, you go look it up. By the 5th time you look it up, you're like, yes, okay? And don't take this for granted. I have been doing this for longer than I will admit. A long, 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 long time, okay? But the fact is words that I don't use on a regular basis, I'm like, I think I know what that means. I look it up, and this is what I do. If I look it up and I was correct in its meaning, I do a little happy dance. Yeah, look how smart I am. If I look it up and I was wrong, I go, okay, haha. Now I know what the correct answer is, and I don't embarrass myself, and everybody thinks I knew what it was. You see? Okay. All right. So each week we're going to go over a different genre, a different grouping of medical terms, mostly based on body system. This week, we're going to go over anatomical directions, planes, and positions. This is very important, especially if you are going on to a clinical side. If you are going to move toward a career on the clinical side, then if the physician says, we're going to do this laterally, you need to know that that means from the side, okay, or posteriorly, or whatever, okay? So, and those of you in health information management need to know as a coder, because you need to understand, so you can interpret that then again into coding language. All right, it's a whole thing. Healthcare. It's as complicated as the human body. Yikes. All right, so let's take a look. Terms often used that you may not really understand what they mean. That comes in the title of, no, not the title of this class, but maybe in the title of another class you have, like anatomy and pathophysiology. Okay, anatomy refers to the structure of the human body. Well, anybody, but we're doing human, so human. But interestingly, if you have a dog or a cat, they have anatomical structures very similar to humans. But I digress. Anatomical site is a specific location of the body, and specificity, being specific, is very critical in healthcare, in all aspects of healthcare, because it makes a difference. If a patient has a fractured arm, it makes a difference if it's the humerus or the ulna or the tibia. Don't you think? Don't you think that would make a difference? Just make believe like you're understanding what I'm saying. Give me a nod of the head every now and then. Thank you very much. Okay, I appreciate that. All right. I mean, even the dogs really kind of, well, they usually look at me like, again, really? Okay. All right. So specificity is very critical. Pathology, which you may be familiar with, is the lab and pathology. Whenever you go get a blood test or something, that's the study actually of disease. And that's when they look through the microscopes, okay? Pathophysiology, think path, the process of disease. And etiology is the study of the causes of disease. So there are 5 words that you will hear often in your adventures in healthcare, that now hopefully you have a better understanding of what they mean, and that should give you a better understanding of who's talking about what, where, how, why. Okay. All right. Now, the human body is not literally divided up into anatomical planes. Unless you go to a magic show, sometimes they cut people in half, but we don't literally do that on the transverse plane. Transverse, think about that as across. Transverse means across. So that's across the center of the body, dividing the body into top and bottom. Okay. But that's logical, right? Then we have the sagittal plane that goes vertically down the center of the body. But this time it goes vertically, dividing into right and left. okay? And then we have the coronal plane, which divides the body in half vertically, but this way instead of this way. So this divides the body into front and back. Does that make sense? I love it when that happens. All right. Now, of course, you will find as you delve into medical terminology, just like English and so many other languages, we have to have multiple words that refer to kind of sort of refer to the same thing. Okay. These are used in different contexts. And as you continue in your healthcare education, you will get to you'll become more familiar with how these words are used. But superior means above. And that's very similar to the way we use that word in the English language, okay? Closer to the head is what we mean. So if the fracture is superior to the laceration, the broken bone is closer to the head than the cut. Laceration is a cut, okay? And inferior is below, closer to the feet. All right? Now, of course, we have terms for the palm of your hand. You know, like when you go, high five. All right, maybe not. You're not really appreciating my jokes, but okay, I inherited my sense of humor from my father. May he rest in peace. All right, palmar refers to the surface of the palm of your hand, and plantar is the surface of the sole of your foot. Now, I'm not going to take my shoe off and show this to you because I have confidence that you all can figure out what the sole of your foot looks like. And now you can refer to it as the plantar surface of the body versus the palmar surface of the body. Okay, now, of course, we have anatomical directions side to side. And the one thing that you need to remember absolutely is the directions refer to the patient's sides, not the doctor, the nurse, or anybody speaking to them, okay? So the left side is the patient's left, and the right side is the patient's right. Lateral, it refers to sides. So you may have heard the term bilateral, which means both sides. Like a bicycle actually means two wheels, different from a unicycle, which is one wheel. Bicycle, two wheels. Bilateral, two sides. And this is something that will be good for you to learn right now from the beginning, is as you're learning about prefixes, roots, and suffixes, these will help you to take apart words that you're unfamiliar with and try to figure out what they mean if you don't have that dictionary by your side. Okay? All right. All right. Anatomical directions, center outwards. So medial means the middle of the patient. Okay? And this generally would be referred to viscerally inside, but not necessarily, not exclusively. Then we have proximal, nearer to the center. Now, remember, we had superior, closer to the head, inferior, closer to the feet. Now we have proximal, closer to the center of the body, distal, away from the torso. Okay? And look, here we have that word transverse again, horizontally, side by side, across, which is also very similar to the way that word is used in English. Okay? All right. Questions? All right. All right. More directions, you would think, right? But okay, now we have front to back. Anterior means the front. And if you remember, or you'll be learning, the prefix ante means before. So anterior means front. That makes sense, right? If any of you ever in the South, I mean, you're probably mostly from South Carolina. If you've heard of antebellum homes, ante, A-N-T-E, means before, bellum refers to the Civil War. Okay. All right. Ventral is along the belly. So my dog really likes me to scratch her ventrally. Is that a good way to remember it? No? You want me to show you my dog's belly? No. We'll save that for another time. I don't want to blow all the fun stuff right away. Okay. Posterior is the back. Okay. And think of post, like post mortem, which is after death. Post, after, posterior, the back, and dorsal means along the back. And you may remember this if you have any experience with sharks or watching the movie Jaws, because that's how you always get the first clue that sharks are in the water, is the dorsal fin that sticks up. Oh, the dorsal fin along the back of the shark. Okay. Isn't this nice? More directions. Visceral means inside. So like, hopefully your heart, your lungs, there's visceral. Those are relating to visceral, they're inside. Deep is toward the inside, deep into. That's a regular word, deep. Only not like deep like a well, but deep into the patient. Okay, now we're getting to some fancy stuff. Medullary is an inner region. It sounds like it should be a specific location in the body, but it's not. It's an inner region. Parietal is the outer wall, but still inside, okay? So the outer wall of the lungs, the parietal, you'll learn about the parietal membrane that is the outer wall that surrounds the lungs to protect it. Okay, superficial along the surface, and you know this, oh, I got a superficial cut. All right, and cortical is an outer area. Again, some of these words, don't you think, seem a little redundant, but they're ever so slightly different. And you will start to learn and see these words in context in physician documentation and reports, like operative reports. And that's where that's really going to come to play for you. Okay, but baby steps. All right. An affected area. And you may be familiar with these terms as we have heard over the last 300, 400, 900 years with COVID, okay, is localized, only this is referring just to the human body, okay? So like a localized rash might be like just on the back of someone's hand, okay? It's just a small area. Generalized is affecting a large or indescript area. So for example, you may see this in regard to burns on somebody who has been in a fire. The burns may cover such a widespread that you can't start listing all of the anatomical sites that are affected. And proliferative is something that's in abundance. And typically proliferative is used to refer to a pathogen, sometimes metastasized cancer, when it replicates throughout the body to the point where there aren't, you don't have enough time to list all of the anatomical sites affected. Okay. All right, we're almost done for today, but I want to go through the cavities. So cavities are just like a cavity in your tooth is really just a hole. It's a space in your tooth. It's a space where your tooth should be, but it's no longer there because it was eaten up by caries. But that's a whole nother conversation. These are spaces throughout the human body that cradle or house certain organs. Okay, so we're going to start with the cranial cavity. And the cranial cavity basically houses what? Your brain, but also nerves and blood vessels and all kinds of stuff going on up there, I hope. All right. The tympanic and anatomical cavity is your ear. Inside, your tympanic membrane, also known as your eardrum. Tympan comes from, I don't remember which language, but it has to do with sound. So think of the timpani, which is an instrument in an orchestra. Good. Okay. Your nasal cavities, which is the first alert sign that you may have allergies or a cold. Your spinal cavity, which is, when we'll get to this when we talk about the skeletal system, but you'll note that the vertebrae all have a hole in them that, as it lines up, is the spinal cavity, which is where your spinal cord travels down from your brain all the way to just below your waist. And that's like the green area that you see there. Okay. And your thoracic cavity is your chest. And if you've ever heard, and sometimes if you watch TV shows, medical TV shows, you'll hear them refer to the thoracic cavity. That's your chest that houses your ribs and your lungs and your heart and a bunch of other stuff. You'll learn all about that. Okay. All right. And we're not done yet. The oral cavity that houses your teeth and your tongue. Okay. The pleural cavity, which is the cavity within the thoracic cavity that specifically houses your lungs. Your abdominal cavity, which is down below your waist in the front, and that houses a bunch of stuff, your bladder, your kidneys, or not your kidneys are in the back, but your bladder, then it depends if you're a boy or a girl, because boys and girls have different stuff there. Okay. And then of course your pelvic cavity, which is basically between your hip bones. Okay. Oh, that's a lot of stuff. This is why I say this is going to be your watchwords. Review often. Use that medical dictionary. It is not cheating. It is being smart. Because as you use the same term over and over again, you are going to remember it. And I want you to remember it correctly. Okay? And then query when necessary. Query is a fancy schmancy word. It means ask. And I am the one to ask. I am here. I am your coach. I am your Sherpa. I am here. I have no other purpose in the world than to help you. It's true. Okay. So email me. Please note this email address, sapiensc@cctech.edu. The one under class list is wrong. If you use that to send me an email, it's going to end up in one of the rings of Saturn. And then I'm never going to see it because I don't visit Saturn very often. But if you use this email, it will come to me and then I will answer you. I promise within 24 hours. And I was a Girl Scout, so this counts. Okay. If we email back and forth, if that's not enough, we can set up an appointment to talk on the phone. We can do a one-on-one Zoom. We can FaceTime, whatever it is. I'm here for you guys to help you learn this language of healthcare. And remember, regardless of your future career plans, you all at some point in your lives will be a patient or the loved one of a patient. And understanding this is going to benefit you personally as well as professionally. Okay? Any other questions? All right. Get yourself a medical dictionary and use it, use it, use it. All right? And email me within 24 hours, I promise, a response. All righty. Have a great day.